Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. In tonight's video I've got a special guest, and that's the co-founder and managing director of Power Ledger, Australia's first ICO. Welcome, David Martin.
Thanks, Alex. Lovely to be here.
So mate, that's all going ahead tomorrow, Sunday afternoon, Western Australian time, I believe. So you must be pretty excited about that.
Yeah, very excited and very nervous. So it kicks off 6 p.m. Perth time, so 8 p.m. on the East Coast, and it's at 6 a.m. on the East Coast of America. So we're really excited.
Yeah, beautiful. So do you want to just dive into maybe a bit of your personal history and how you got involved with cryptocurrency or blockchains and the company?
Yeah, I think like most people, I kind of fell into it. I've been working in the energy industry for about 20 years here in Perth, and senior roles in the big utility companies here and in regional Western Australia. And in the last 5 years, I've been consulting and looking at the integration of renewables like microgrids and PV systems and batteries into distribution networks. And one of the things that became really, really obvious in working in that part of the industry was that unless we did something to incentivize customers to stick around, as soon as battery storage got cheap enough, they'd disappear, and we'd be left with stranded networks with hardly any customers attached to them. And the ones that couldn't get off, the customers who were financially or socially marginalised, or they lived in a block of flats, they'd be stuck paying the bill of that everybody else had left behind. So we needed to find a way to encourage people to stay connected to the network, and turning the distribution network into a trading platform looked like a really good idea. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't know anything about the technology that was going to help us be able to identify the provenance of a kilowatt hour, who consumed that kilowatt hour, and how to tie those transactions together. One of my partners, Gemma Green, was completing a PhD in disruptive technology at Curtin University, and she was running a project looking at a similar-ish problem with the strata housing market in Australia. It's about 35% of the housing market. Hardly any of them have PV on the roof because of the same problem. You can't identify who's the guy who owns the kilowatt hour that's being generated off the roof. And if there are 10 people living under a roof and you can't be guaranteed that you can allocate that energy to that individual, they can't agree, and nobody puts PV on the roof. So she was looking for a platform that allowed the equitable allocation of, if not the energy, because people have different consumption patterns, at least the value of that energy. Gemma had been introduced to some blockchain developers in Perth and about another issue, and she sort of floated the idea of, well, how could we use the blockchain to support energy trading? And the four of us got together, another partner of ours who's an expert in energy regulation. We came together and realised that the blockchain provided the perfect platform to support what essentially is peer-to-peer energy trading, and Power Ledger was born in May of last year.
So yeah, for beginners, I guess, in a nutshell, that's what Power Ledger is hoping to do, isn't it? Peer-to-peer energy exchange of renewable energy. Main focus is solar at this stage, but could be applied to any renewable energy worldwide.
Doesn't discriminate on the source of the energy. What we're really being able to do is trade energy at a distribution level without the intermediaries of a wholesale market or a retailer getting in the road, taking their clip, and really forcing the price of energy up. So what we're able to do is have a guy, at number 1 Smith Street with PV panels on his roof. He's away from at work during the day, and his solar panels are pumping energy out into the network, and at the moment you're kind of forced to sell that to your retailer at really what is a pittance, a really low price.
Yep.
But your next door neighbour may be at home and he might not have PV on his roof, and he's consuming energy. So you're getting paid 5 or 6 or 7 cents for your retailer, whereas your next door neighbour is getting charged 27, 28 cents for the retailer for the same energy. So by being able to disintermediate that whole process and allow me to sell my energy to my next door neighbour, I can get a better return than I could get from my retailer. He can get a cheaper price than he can get from his retailer. And using the network as a trading platform in that way encourages us to stick around and share the value of what really is a really important social asset.
So just going to a basic way to think about it, what does somebody need to have this? Is it only an internet connection and the computer with the meter? They don't need to buy a Power Ledger box as such or anything like that, do they?
No, we're a software service. So what they do need is a smart meter, and smart meters are becoming more and more common. Where we're doing our trial in New Zealand, all homes have smart meters, all homes in Victoria have smart meters, and they're becoming more and more common and more needed for the whole IoT of energy. But really what our software does is read all the meters all the time in a discrete trading environment, and we can match excess energy with energy consumption create a trade on the basis of some predetermined trading algorithms and settle that trade in the 15-minute interval that the energy is consumed. So it's much faster in terms of the cash flow. There's much less prudential requirements, so there's no financial security required, and we can rip the cost out of the system by allowing consumers just to trade energy in really discrete locations.
Yep. And that's industrial use, flats, and even for those people with solar, they can sell into the grid, but you don't have to have the panels to buy off your neighbour. So this has got plenty of real-world applications. And do you want to maybe touch on the, for international viewers or those that aren't aware, we have seen a lot of problems with the power grid in Australia recently. So
yeah, that's right. So, electricity is one of those things that you've got to be able to meet demand. That could be range anywhere across the course of a day with the available generation. So you need a trading platform that's able to deal with the minute-by-minute consumption and generation of electricity. And that's what our platform's tried to do. So you mentioned, commercial strata. We're about to start a project in Tasmania with a company called Nest Energy that have installed a megawatt of solar panels behind a master meter in a commercial precinct in Launceston. So it's a number of commercial buildings. One of them's a warehouse that has lots and lots of roof space, but not a lot of an energy demand. It's just a big empty box.
Yeah.
So they've got all this roof space that is basically sitting there unutilised. But they've decided to put a megawatt of solar panels on that to really monetise their roof space and sell that energy to the consumers that are around them in that same microgrid environment. Yeah. So that's just one example of businesses being able to make some money on the side, being able to monetise their spare capacity on their roof in much the same way somebody driving for Uber can monetise the spare capacity in their family car if they've got nothing to do on a Friday night, or Airbnb, you've got spare capacity in your spare room out the back, you can monetise it. And this really is an opportunity for businesses and consumers to monetise that empty roof space, decarbonise the energy, get cheaper energy, and share that energy with their neighbours.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess a lot of the questions I get or pushback is, how is this going to work on government infrastructure or even private regional energy grids if you guys are using them? Like, how is that all going to work, and do you think that is going to be a problem?
I think it's going to be a challenge that we'll need to overcome in the next 18 months or so. So in the sort of environment I described down in Launceston, where we've got a commercial strata or a residential strata we're working with here in Perth, the regulations don't get in the way. We can do whatever we like, really, behind a master meter. Yeah. You're right, when you start using a regulated network, there's a whole series of rules and obligations that have been developing over the last, 30 years as we've had deregulated energy systems. And they were kind of drafted 20 years ago when peer-to-peer trading just wasn't even thought of. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have distributed renewable resources. Everything was about making it bigger and pushing energy from a big power station down big power lines to customers that live a long, long way away. That physical model of the energy industry has changed. And now, in the last 6 or 7 years, we've had more new generation installed on Australian rooftops than we have installed and connected to transmission systems. So physically, the system has changed. And so we now have the ability to trade energy at the fringes. We've got technology that allows us to do it, but we've just got to get the rule set to say, you know what, times have changed, we've got to move on. And the network businesses that we talk to are really sympathetic to that. They know that if they don't do something to get customers hanging around and staying connected, they'll just wave them goodbye. And as they do that, they become more expensive. Other customers are then incentivized to get off, and they risk stranding their assets. And it's not uncommon now for network businesses to look at their investments and understand that if I don't have a payback period on this investment of less than 10 years, then I can't be certain what customers are going to be doing in 10 years' time. They might be there, they might not, they might be looking after themselves. So they're really sympathetic to the fact that the technology has made some serious change. And in New Zealand, where we're working with Vector, they were one of the first network businesses that put their hand up and said, hey, we'd like to try this. Can you come across to New Zealand? And we had great feedback from distribution businesses from Tas Networks in Tasmania, who are fantastic and really punching above their weight in this space, and Western Power over here in Perth, who are again doing some enormous work in connecting new types of technologies.
Yeah. So your hope is to prove that this works on a micro scale. And is it the White Gum Valley at Curtin University where you've already got a working model of this? Is that right?
Yeah, so Whitegut Valley was a trial that was funded by ARENA and sponsored by Curtin University, and they were looking at the development of sustainable housing, sustainable group housing, so sustainable for water, for energy, for all sorts of things. And on the back of that, they installed some PV and battery systems in those developments to try and make them as energy self-sufficient as we can. Now, we're not a part of that ARENA-funded project, but we're supporting them sort of after the fact by taking our trading platform and allowing them to allocate energy to all of the tenants within those buildings at a pre-agreed price. And if you don't use your allocation, then you've got the ability to sell it on to your next door neighbour. One of the houses in the development is the Shack, the Sustainable Housing for Artists and Creatives, and it's a low income. Designed for low-income tenants. And so Shack, owned by Access Housing Australia, wanted to be able to pass through the cost savings from renewable energy to their tenants. So they've got an agreement there where the tenants will pay a really discounted price for their electricity that's coming from the roof. But they also know that if demand is high and they need to start supplying energy from the grid, that supply is much more expensive. So using our platform, they can disaggregate, I guess, the energy consumption and know that if I'm using my allocation, that's great. If I'm not using my allocation, I can share it with the guy next door. And if he's using even more than his allocation and causing a demand from the network, he can be charged for that electricity at that price. So you can manage the risk of overconsumption in that point by being able to identify who's the guy who caused the demand and have him pay for it. So you can't do that unless you've got a platform that disaggregates energy from the value of energy.
So that's probably a good leeway into the actual platform itself. So you've built your own blockchain, the Eco Chain, and I know you were mucking around with the Bitcoin blockchain in the past, and then we've sort of in the pre-interview we spoke about how you want to maybe get back onto Ethereum at the moment, but your blockchain is proof of stake based, which for those of you that aren't familiar is a lot more favorable to microtransactions and not paying network fees rather than the computers doing the mining.
That's right.
So yeah, did you want to touch on that
approach because, sorry, I spoke over the top of you.
Yeah.
No, we took that approach because what we're doing essentially is doing microtransactions of energy. So if you used a proof of work blockchain that uses an enormous amount of energy, you're kind of defeating the purpose. So we went to a proof of stake blockchain. We're managing security by tangling data with the Bitcoin blockchain just to add a level of security and immutability to the records that we're developing. But over time, we won't need to do that. We'll have enough nodes on our own chains. And you're right, as we express in the white paper that we've published for the ICO, we're moving towards using the Ethereum blockchain as a secondary layer on our own blockchain.
So people that are going to participate in this ICO and buy power tokens are basically investing in the platform itself or the software, so to speak, which is a lot of the way a lot of people like to think about these sort of things.
I think what your distinction you made is a really good one. So it's a platform that we've developed. We've got a number of applications. So there's that peer-to-peer trading behind a master meter in a commercial space. Trading across the network. We've got another application that allows the fractionalisation of the ownership of large-scale assets. So we can have 1,000, 10,000 people owning 1,000th or 10,000th of a large-scale wind farm, for example, and getting that allocation of the revenue. So we've developed those applications that all sit on the Power Ledger platform. We're also making the platform available to competitors and other application hosts that want to use the platform to provide their own peer-to-peer energy trading type of applications in other jurisdictions around the world or just other types of applications. So that the work in the ICO now, the power token, is all about the value of that token in the use of the platform, so its utility in the platform. And so our work from now on will be about building the applications, but also broadening the reach of the platform itself.
And a lot of my viewers are probably familiar with Ethereum and Neo and the concept of gas, but you guys will have a Sparks token, which is how to pay or sell the power, so to speak. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So because we've got a fiat currency or a banking interface with the trading application, so a customer who's buying and selling energy on our platform can use their credit card through our system, their own banking infrastructure to buy Sparks. And Sparks are the trading token, that represent the value of energy. So that when a kilowatt hour leaves my meter and flies through the grid or across the network to your meter, a number of sparks and the predetermined value of those sparks and the value of energy will determine the number of sparks will flow through to my wallet. And then as I get an accumulation of sparks, I can go back to the application host and redeem those for cash. So the sparks are just part of that closed loop trading application that mean we can transact for the value of energy without having a financial transaction every 30 minutes, which is an expensive thing to do. So we use a spark as the transactive token, whereas the power token is a protocol token. It's what gives the application host the right to use the platform and to get a pool of sparks to support trading within its own application group.
Absolutely. And I think this is a perfect real-world application of the blockchain technology so that people can't copy sparks and all that sort of thing. It's all on a ledger, which is exactly what we want to see this technology doing. So there's plenty to like about this project from my point of view, mate. So I guess where do you see this going? And I've read that you've already had some interest from Japan, the US, New Zealand.
Yep. So we're already operating the platform in New Zealand in a trial. We're already doing autonomous financial transactions for energy in New Zealand. Yeah. We have had interest from Japan and the US. So a large utility company in the US is looking at that fractionalization application I spoke about earlier. Yeah. And we've also had interest from Japan, one of the largest utilities in Japan, looking at how we might support them in the development of sort of virtual power plants through using the blockchain to allocate the value of portions of power stations. So the interest has been really great. Our business development manager is with Austrade at the moment on a delegation to India. And so where there are urban communities or developing urban communities that are looking for increased access to energy that the Western world has been taking for granted for such a long time, rather than repeating the mistakes of the past by building big coal-fired power stations, big networks and pushing energy out long ways to consumers. They're looking at how they can have a more decentralized energy system. And so that we see the Power Ledger platform as becoming as the ledger for the the distributed ledger for a distributed power system future.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think, where do you see this going ideally in 5 or 10 years? Where would you be your dream if you hit a home run with this and it really takes off?
And dream is that we are allowing the citizens of the world to design and implement and invest in and then benefit from their own power systems. What we see at the moment is even in Australia, nearly 2 million people have put rooftop panels on their roofs, but solar panels on their roofs, but they're not really getting the full benefit from that because they're not allowed to monetize it in a way that reflects the value of their investment. What we want to be able to do is provide a platform that allows that economic incentive to flow to the right people, and then help work with the utilities to present an incentive mechanism that increases their investment appetite. So instead of governments building big 200 megawatt hour batteries and paying hundreds of millions of dollars for them, we provide the framework that says to the people of Australia, here's an incentive. You go and install some storage and operate it in this way and we'll all benefit and the benefit can flow to you. And it's a much better, lower cost, lower risk investment model for getting more distributed renewables out to where the customers are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just to wrap it up, I guess the token generation event is going ahead, as you said, 6 p.m. Tomorrow. For my subscribers, I'm probably going to try and do a video on exactly how to do that, but there'll be an Ethereum address appear on the page that I've got up now for viewers to see, and they'll just have to send some Ethereum, and My Ether wallet is probably the easiest way to do it. You guys are supporting My Ether wallet with the tokens and all that, I believe. That's right, and so the pre-ICO sale is 100 million tokens. That's going to go until it's sold out. So it's hard to gauge. I know this is getting a lot of popularity in Australia. It's hard to gauge the worldwide what's going to happen. So did you have an ideal amount that you'd like to raise in your mind, or the more the merrier?
Obviously, we'd like to sell out the pre-sale. We've put a cap on the number of tokens that can be bought in any one transaction on the pre-sale to try and give as many people an opportunity to get involved in the pre-sale as possible. But there's a fixed volume there and a price. And then we will work out at the end of the day, on the back of that process, how many tokens we have left available for the public sale, and then the public sale will operate over a 4-week period of time with a series of incentives, of discounts in the earlier weeks to incentivise people to come on board. But that'll be left open for 4 weeks with no price to give as many people as possible a chance to buy the tokens.
And there's also a large amount of tokens that have been allocated to private companies and early investors, I guess, but they're escrowed for 3 years. Is that my understanding?
There's a in the white paper, you'll see that we have 350 million for the for the ICO, and we have a proportion that we're holding on to in escrow for a long period of time to make sure that we've got the ability to keep funding the business. But there's also a pool that we've kept hold of that we can use to incentivize application hosts like big retailers, network businesses, other companies to come on the platform and bring their customers on and start trading across the platform. They will be held in escrow as well, because as soon as an application host comes on and gets a pool of sparks, they've got to surrender those power tokens with us. So it shouldn't impact the token market, but it's going to encourage more consumers to come into the platform and give that the platform the breadth and the reach it needs to really drive value and to really make a change in the energy system.
And I believe you guys have already been in contact with Bittrex about listing the token for trading there as well.
We're talking to a couple of exchanges, and those conversations are going well, and we'll announce to the market which exchanges we'll list on once those agreements are reached.
Awesome. Okay, mate. Well, that's been fantastic. I hope our viewers have enjoyed that, and I'll wrap that interview up there. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.
Brilliant.